just a little bit for fun, because I already speak a little bit French and Spanish, so why not just all the Romance languages, except for Portuguese, I don't know. Anyway, it's fun. I can do this now, all the time. With tempo. Va bene. But, yeah, this is my new location also. It's beautiful, because you can just see, like, these recycling, like, plants, and then, like, trash bag back there. It's lovely. Ay, de todos modos. A lot of these thoughts come from a book about this thick, so if you're not me, you may not be interested in reading. It's called The Ethics of Beauty. You should read it. It's good. But anyway, a lot of this is, like, inspired by that. Sometimes the gospel and the fact that, like, God loves us and saves us, etc., is incredible, and you're just like, oh, it's so beautiful. And sometimes sitting at your scene about it, I'm just like why are we even being so dramatic about it? It's just so natural and right and, like, inevitable almost. And it's not even worth being surprised over, but just you can accept it calmly. And I think both of those are legitimate ways, kind of modes of faith and praising God. But one thing that does make me sad is kind of our delight in beating ourselves up type thing for being like these little worms that are helpless and God has to save us. I don't think that's a very healthy attitude. So a little bit of philosophy. What is good, which makes sense because everything that is, God created, right? And He is good and He called it good. So then evil is like chaos or non-being. It doesn't really exist. For instance, like sin is like a private, a lack of good. So like hatred isn't really something that exists on its own. It's a lack of love. Evil is kind of like chaos or non-being, like those waters in Genesis that originally were without form and void and just ugh. So that's evil. So it's not really a thing. Number 2, we are creatures created by God, so He drew us up from nothing and is still drawing us up from nothing and from chaos. Non-being, so in Genesis, the Spirit of God appears over the face of the waters and moves over, and then kind of creation comes up toward Him out of the chaos and the nothingness toward God. In the end, in love, in eros, so like self-transcending love. And in that way comes up, toward God, the like logos and pattern of all things into its true form, and that's how creation works. That's like the way of things. That's okay. We've got to start somewhere, or rather start nowhere. Plus the fall, like however that affected things, sin, to my understanding, is kind of like just falling right back into that chaos and non-being from which you were pulled and which you're supposed to be coming up, but instead it's like going back down. And falling away, and there's a lot of that language. So by definition, like as we're being created and or saved, so which is kind of the same movement, right? Out of nothing and evil toward God, toward light from darkness, toward like shape and beauty from chaotic formlessness, and toward God from death and sin and evil. By definition, we have nothing in ourselves, to save ourselves, and we're hopeless in and of ourselves, and like totally dependent on God for life and for being and for everything. But like that's just kind of, that's how things are as a created being. Like, I guess there's no need to be guilty about that fact or dwell on it that much, right? The thing is to focus on Christ and His beautiful example, which is above you, and continue moving toward that, because it's Him that's creating and saving you. And if you look back and continue to look back at like your own helplessness and formlessness and inability to like help yourself or whatever, and obsess over that as if you should be able to do anything for yourself, it's like Peter, right, trying to walk on the water and come toward Jesus, but then he looks back and immediately starts to sink. But what he needs to do is to keep his focus on Jesus. Creation and salvation, kind of the same movement from chaos and non-being toward God and toward truth and goodness, truth and beauty. And that's okay. Keep looking at Jesus. Don't look back at your own helplessness. Adios.